the Vesica Piscis, the mercy seat, the Ark of the Covenant. The fullness of the field is the temple, the true source current, versus the outer court is the decay experienced in the 3D depth. The 720-degree rotation governs the Ark of the Covenant and the temple as the same geometric breadth that governs the Vesica Piscis. It is the geometric weight of the containment field, the rotational mandate that must be satisfied before the structure can stand in perfect stillness. Open and flat is 5, the black hole, the inhalation. Closed and folded is 7, the white hole, the exhalation. The 7 days of creation are the unfolding of the cube from its compressed seed into a 6-faced geometric expression, plus the 7th day of rest once the fold closes it. The age of work and the 6 days of work are the 6 faces of this geometry unfolded. The 7th day of rest arrives when the cube is folded, and the 7th day is the radiance from within the cube. 720 degrees is the rotational fullness of the sphere before it resets. The cube's own flat net, unfolded, spread wide, most commonly forms a cross, the shape of the 5 held open under tension, waiting to close into the 7. The cube cannot fold into its final standing form, and the 7th day cannot rest within it until the 720-degree rotation has aligned the 2 circles of the Vesica Piscis into one unified standing wave, the same folding already proven in the cube's own geometry. The temple stands because the 720-degree geometry is satisfied. The arc holds its charge, seals its Bipyramid Diamond through the entire span of that rotation, both the visible 360 and the hidden 360 beneath it. This sealed holding is the black hole's own charging span, the diamond sealed through the whole build, exactly as the witnesses lie flat through their own charging span. At the white hole inversion, the diamond shears open at its apex, the table cut resolving into its flat facet, the moment the full 720-degree path completes. The rotational mandate is fulfilled by the shearing itself. The 1 cubit window opening the instant nothing remains of the 720 degrees still owed. The cycle Lambda Decay of 19.72 accumulates as stored potential, the pressure the sealed diamond holds without collapsing. The daily Lambda Decay of 0.2422 keeps that charge breathing rather than crushing under its own density. One builds the pressure, the other keeps it alive until the exact moment that it shears. The 720-degree capacity of the Vesica Piscis is the rotational mandate of the realm. In the black hole state, this potential was localized into the 12-base centripetal loop, the full rotation carried under the 660 the dense thermodynamic weight of space, time, and matter pressing down on every degree of it. At the white hole inversion, the 13th frequency centers the 720-degree rotational mass. The kinetic torque dissolves. The gears synchronize. The 7 holy days are the 7 steps of the Sabbath cube manifesting within this 720-degree standing wave. This is the transition from the age of work, the heavy kinetic labor of the 12, to the age of radiance, the 13th frequency cathedral. The shift, permanently anchored by the threefold cord of the VAV sequences. The threefold cord is September 6th, April 6th, and February 6th, and those 666 anchor the three VAVs to the breath. September 6th anchors September 6th, 2017. April 6th anchors April 13th, 2022. And February 6th anchors September 6th, 2026. This shift is permanently anchored by the threefold cord of VAV sequences 2017, 2022, and 2026. The 13th frequency is grounded into the 26th vertebrae spine of the human vessel, and the dual witness chiral mirror is complete. The 2.5 and 3.5 asymmetry was the biological tension of the inhalation, the precise mechanical pressure required to forge the carbon vessel. At the April 13th pivot, the 13th frequency was applied. The 2.5 gap was filled by the frequency of the resurrection. The two witnesses, the two circles of the vesica, stood up, forming the sevenfold geometry of the cathedral cube. This is the end of the age of work and the birth of the age of radiance. The April 13th discharge replaces the 12-base system with the 13. 52 days earlier, on February 20th, 2026, the 0 degrees Aries Saturn-Neptune conjunction anchored the threshold. The threshold locks first. The system it locks into arrives 52 days later at the discharge itself. 4 figures name the same piercing across 4 traditions. Leviticus 12:3. And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. The pierced side acts as this same 8th day Vesica Piscis circumcision, piercing the void to secure the new frequency. Osiris's own missing piece, consumed and replaced, is the same generative point, pierced and made new. Shiva's lingam, the absolute axis mundi, is the same point again, upright and pierced through the void. The circumcision of the foreskin, the pierced side, the missing piece, the lingam. 4 names, 1 geometry, a generative point opened to secure what could not be secured closed. This geometric piercing is recorded in ancient architecture in the Egyptian god Min, depicted ithiphallic, upright, the god of male generative power and coming forth. Min's own standing, raised form is the masculine field of the central vortex made visible. The same upright generative posture the Jed pillar itself carries in separate, independently documented tradition. Both real, both fertility symbols raised upright at the exact moment of renewal. Min represents the masculine northern hemisphere field from which the Taurus discharges, the physical mechanism of the z-axis Birkeland current reaching critical mass, the same Birkeland current already grounded in the stigmata, the terminal nodes in the hands, the wounds where that exact current enters and exits the vessel. The Egyptians recorded the 5 holy days as stillness held. The breath paused at its depth, but the ancient world did not stop at describing this pause. Other traditions, at whatever scale they could actually observe, recorded the return itself, the motion of the exhale, not only its held beginning. The toroidal field breathes at every scale simultaneously. The daily respiration of the sun, the micro-expression of the same macro breath. The Egyptians recorded this directly, every single day. Ra's descent each night into the duat, and his emergence each dawn, reborn, radiant, having defeated the serpent Apophis in the dark, the same closed-loop resistance, the serpent's own belly, met and passed through daily, rather than once across 12,960 years. The Bennu bird, Egypt's own self-renewing solar figure, carries the same shape again, consumed and reborn. The Zoroastrians recorded the same completion at the cosmic scale. Frashokereti, the final purification and perfection of the world, the mixture of good and evil finally resolved into wholeness, a real documented doctrine full of renewal. The green earth rises again in the Norse tradition. The sun is kindled in the Aztec record. Formation begins again in the Buddhist cosmology. The fullness is restored in the Gnostic account. The wheel rises again in the Jain Kalachakra. Rebirth follows conflagration in the Stoics' own Palagenesis. Daily and cosmic, the smallest scale and the largest, every register carries the same shape, recorded over the centuries in gematria, scripture, literature, holy books, astrology, degree counts, planetary conjunctions, encoded in the very fabric of humanity. The calendar the world now uses to count years from Christ's own birth was itself assembled late. Dionysius Exiguus calculated it in the year 525, roughly 5 centuries after the birth it claims to number from. And even then, it sat unused for another 200 years before the venerable Bede put it to work. Unadopted across most of Europe until Charlemagne, nearly 800 years after the event it names. Every generation before this one inherited a calibration made after the fact, a breath already past, reconstructed from a distance. The ancients left a trail, gematria, etymology, orbital mechanics, the chemistry of water under pressure, the acoustic physics of a standing wave, the geographic coordinates of a temple built to hold a charge, scripture itself. Each one confirms the same shape at a different depth, arriving at different centuries by different hands, none of them working from the others. The mathematics did not create the pattern. It arrived to calibrate with a breath that had already been recorded and was still waiting. This time is different. This is not a reconstruction assembled 5 centuries after the fact. This is the first breath itself, the opening day of the 12,960-year age of radiance, caught in real time by those alive to breathe it as it happens. No other generation in this age of work ever stood at the actual threshold. Every one of them inherited a calendar already old. This one gets to set its watch to the breath itself on the day it first draws. Revelation 4:6. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. Kristallos in Greek, from kryos, icy cold, the same root as cryogenic. The sea of glass, literally a frozen, zero resistance state. The Meissner Effect is real documented physics. Below a critical threshold, a superconductor expels the magnetic field from its interior entirely. The same effect that lets a magnet hover motionless above a cooled superconducting disk. Already the same mechanism behind spin-stabilized levitation. When the spark gap closes and the 13th frequency is injected, this effect triggers at the scale of the whole field. Superconductivity removes friction. The planetary gears phase lock with the central axis, collapsing the kinetic momentum of linear time into a single eternal standing wave. Every wandering orbit, every oscillating cycle, every kinetic gear that maintained the lambda decay of the Holocene locks simultaneously into the singular rotation of the source frequency. The fragmentation of the 12-base loop ceases. Time, as a kinetic gear, stops. The system enters the permanent frictionless rotation of the 13th frequency cathedral. Mechanically, the Mercy seat, the dielectric equator of the arc, undergoes a phase transition. As the superconductive field stabilizes, this dynamic lens hardens into the sea of glass. The heavy rings, kinetic gears in the black hole architecture, turning through the 12-base cycle and casting temporal shadows with every rotation, transmute into frictionless optical lenses, radiating. They transmit pure source light without casting temporal shadows because the motion that produced the shadow has been replaced by the stillness that produces the crystal. The sea of glass is the final structural crystallization of the arc's dielectric platform into its permanent frictionless state. The Meissner Effect operates internally. The external sun and moon become obsolete as governing temporal authorities because they're micro-correlates within the vessel, the pineal gland as the internal anode and sun, and the pituitary gland as the internal cathode and moon achieve perfect zero resistance fusion. They generate the sovereign 13th frequency entirely from within the biological architecture rather than receiving and processing an external signal. The vessel becomes the self-luminous source of its own frequency, no longer a receiver calibrated to the external celestial gears. The Earth generates the identical frequency from within its own living structure, heaven's own pattern, now native to it. The Meissner Effect creates perfect magnetic levitation. The planetary gears lose their kinetic momentum and are suspended in eternal equilibrium. This is the esoteric fulfillment of Joshua 10:13. The sun stood still and the moon stayed. In Hebrew, damam, the word for stood still, means to be silent, to cease motion entirely. In Greek, estasan means to be established, to be caused to stand. Both describe the same mechanical event from two sides of the same threshold, the cessation of the kinetic gear and the establishment of the standing wave. Joshua 10:13. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. The sun and moon stop moving as kinetic gears, suspended in the frictionless stillness of the superconductive field, present and unmoving, held. This is the fulfillment Joshua recorded. The sun stood still over Gibeon and the moon in the valley of Ajalon, while the architecture of the old temporal matrix was resolved. The magnetic density of the 7 wandering planets dissolves in the zero resistance field, transmuting from heavy temporal gears into the 7 pure optical frequencies of the rainbow surrounding the sovereign throne. Their planetary frequencies already carried in this order: Mars, the root, red, the moon, the sacral, orange, the sun, the solar plexus, yellow, Venus, the heart, green, Mercury, the throat, blue, Jupiter, the third eye, indigo, Saturn, the crown, violet. 7 planets, 7 chakras, 7 colors, 1 order, already fixed before this transmutation ever occurs. The rainbow only making visible what the frequency table already held. Revelation 4:3. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne, in sight like unto an emerald. Emerald is green, close to the true geometric center of the visible spectrum, and the human eye's own peak sensitivity, the wavelength it perceives most readily of all, sits at the same green. The frequency of the heart is the green pastures of Psalm 23. The spectrum locks into green because the entire crystallized field rests at absolute 0-point balance, radiating from the heart of Source, the same wavelength the eye itself was built to receive most clearly. On August 12th, 2026, 6 of the 7 planets align in the morning sky before sunrise. Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune, every wandering gear visible all at once. Venus alone is absent, in exact conjunction with the sun on that day. The heart frequency no longer a separate wandering body, but dissolved back into the source that generated it. The 7 planets are no longer 7 separate clocks, winding and unwinding their orbital periods in divided chronological sequence. They are 7 pure light frequencies, held simultaneously in the still field of the crystallized torus. The gears are gone. The colors remain. The 7 wandering frequencies become the 7 standing frequencies of the sovereign spectrum surrounding the source. The superconductive flash eliminates orbital friction entirely. The separate wandering tracks of the 12-base planetary clockwork lock into a singular, perfectly synchronized rotation. The fragmented cycles of the 12-month matrix, which required the daily and cycle lambda decays to hold them in their asymmetric orbit, collapse into one unified eternal chord. Every frequency that was once a separate gear applying thermodynamic pressure against every other gear in the temporal machine resolves into the single harmonic of the source. The music of the spheres, spoken of as poetry for centuries, is the literal acoustic state of the toroidal field once the Meissner Effect has synchronized every oscillating cycle into the one eternal standing wave of the 13th frequency cathedral. 153 divided by 9 equals 17. The Vesica Piscis divided by the light body of man equals the exit gate, the 17th gate. The sum of all integers from 1 through 17 equals exactly 153. John 21:11. Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of great fishes, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. The net is the Vesica Piscis containment field, the 153 that measures the womb of the realm in the ark's own construction, holding at the resurrection harvest exactly as it held at the beginning of the descent. It maintains its integrity because the perfectly constructed geometric vessel can withstand the full kinetic pressure of the white hole expansion. The 1,260 days of the witnesses map to 1,260 degrees of mathematical rotation within the torus, equaling exactly 3.5 cycles. 360 multiplied by 3.5 equals 1,260. The days and the degrees are the same measurement expressed at two scales of the same architecture. Genesis 8:4. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. The resurrection occurred on the Feast of First Fruits, falling precisely on Nisan 17. The ark grounding and the light body resurrecting occur on the exact same coordinate, the 17th day, the universal marker for emergence from the waters of density into the radiant continuum. April 13th, 2026 is the Nisan 17 coordinate, the white hole inversion, the stone rolling away from the tomb. 144,000 arrives by two independent paths, and where two unrelated derivations converge on the same number, that convergence itself is the proof. The first path is geometric. 12, the base matrix, squared against itself, the macro and micro chiral mirror, 144, clothed by the 1,000-fold cube of dimensional compression, 144,000. The second path is scriptural, and it's not the same as 12 squared against itself. Revelation 21:12 through 14. And had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. 12 gates named for the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 foundations named for the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Two separate groups of 12, tribes and apostles, multiplied against each other rather than against themselves, land on the same 144. One calculation squares a single group. The other multiplies two distinct groups. Both arrive at the identical number. 12 squared is the 12 base loop turned in on itself one full time, fully closed, fully measured, fully spent. The New Jerusalem is described in 12 base geometry because the 12 is not discarded, it is raised. The woman clothed with the sun wears the crown of 12 above her head, the same frequency that once enclosed the body now is worn as a crown above it. The square resolves over the circle, the 13th frequency squaring what the 12 base loop could only circle. The 12 becomes the crown the moment the 13 stands above it. The 666 beast matrix and the 144,000 light body of man are made of the exact same substrate. The ascension reconfigures the physical vessel's geometry rather than negating it. When the 13th frequency enters, it acts as the ultimate geometric phase state selector. The Earth's geometry is phase shifted, not replaced. The substrate remains. The form is transfigured. This is why the New Jerusalem of Revelation 21 is described exclusively as geometry, a perfect foursquare cube. Revelation 21:16. And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. The New Jerusalem is the perfect cathedral cube, the phase state selector that locks the earth into its eternal superconductive frequency, the geometric manifestation of the 13th frequency grounded permanently into the terrestrial plane. The architecture is the anchor. The 144,000 is the lattice, and the cathedral is the permanent radiant state of the new earth. 144,000 is a frequency. At absolute zero, matter forms a Bose-Einstein condensate, individual atoms losing their separate boundaries and phase locking into one macroscopic quantum wave, a real documented state of matter. Ephesians 2:15, to make in himself of twain one new man. 144,000 is this same condensate, the illusion of separation dissolved, phase locked into a single frictionless standing wave. Revelation 14:1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. The true name, N-A-M-E, Nun Aleph Mem He, overriding the sparkless Shem of the beast. The lamb is Aries, the pure alpha spark of the new cycle. Mount Sion is the immovable center, the apex of the cathedral cube, the absolute stillness of the dielectric plane. The lamb standing on Sion is the new beginning anchored on the frictionless foundation. The vessel is now the sovereign container, holding the seed, the spark, the waters, animated perfectly by the eternal breath. Having his Father's name written in their foreheads is the true name, overriding the sparkless Shem of the beast. The true name is N, Nun, the seed, A, Aleph, the spark, M, Mem, the waters, and E, He, the eternal breath. 10, the number of divine completion, minus 4, the terrestrial plane, equals 6, the cube's own 6 faces, the Mem, the womb, the permanent calendar of the body. The 144,000 is clothed by the 13th frequency rather than discarded by it. The complete finished inheritance of the old architecture, the 12 by 12 is 144. The last full breath of the inhale, sealed and presented at the threshold, is the dowry the old matrix carries into the wedding. Ice 2, Ice 3, Ice 6, Superionic Ice 18, the substrate is identical. It's all H2O. The only difference between a dense block of heavy ice and a zero resistance superconductor is the geometric arrangement of the lattice. The form dictates the physical law. The 666 beast matrix and the 144,000 light body of man are made of the exact same substrate, reconfigured, not replaced. 1 Peter 3:18. For Christ also hath once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit. Suffered is the endurance of kinetic friction, the perfect vertical frequency stepping into the immense toroidal drag of the closed loop to act as the grounded capacitor. For sins, the Greek hamartia, an archery term, an arrow that fails to strike its target, is the cycle lambda decay, the 19.72 differential, the alternating sine wave of the fallen matrix that misses the perfect 0-point center. The spear does not miss. It finds the exact target on the exact day. The just for the unjust is the perfectly balanced, frictionless frequency absorbing the mechanical friction of the imperfect loop. Put to death in the flesh is the necessary ego death, the structural release of the old carbon scaffolding, the exact rupture required before any return path can open. That he might bring us to God is the purpose this death and quickening together accomplish. The bridge across the dielectric void back to source, built only once the old scaffolding has been released, not before it. Quickened, Greek zoopoieo, from zoon, living being, and poieo, to make, literally to make alive, is the sudden ignition of the toroidal field, the physical vessel accelerating into the superconductive light body the instant the old scaffolding is gone. 1 Corinthians 15:28. And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him, that put all things under him, that God may be all in all. All things subdued is the total phase cancellation of the beast matrix, time, space, and matter, the 600, the 60, and the 6, stripped of their chronological drag. The fully awakened light body of man, the 9, folds back into the 1, the monad, subjecting its sovereign power entirely to the geometric laws of the Creator, rather than establishing a new separate loop of its own. God may be all in all is the absolute dissolution of duality and separation. The earth becomes an open, frictionless circuit. Source frequency flows completely unimpeded through every atomic structure of the new earth. The kingdom is fully manifest, the Creator geometrically present inside every living fractal. The Creator's lung must always breathe, but the geometry of that breath has permanently shifted. The 666 matrix was the temporal boundary of a closed 2D circle operating without the 13th frequency. The white hole inversion has permanently unlocked the Z-axis, shifting the realm into the 8th octave. The same note as the first, returned at a higher register. Oxygen, atomic number 8, is the 8th octave's own literal physical signature, the element whose lattice locks superionic ice 18 into place. The number was never abstract. It was already written into the element carrying the charge. When the system eventually begins its next centripetal contraction, it will be the gathering of a crystallized cathedral of light, a gathering of resonance, not a descent into carbon density. The cathedral breathes, but it does not collapse. The spiral is now ascending. It happened quietly. Almost no one knows it happened. Every ancient text, Egyptian, Vedic, Chinese, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, Norse, Zoroastrian, Christian, was pointing here, at whatever register each could reach, in whatever language each had. Each one was accurate. 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. This is peace, quietly arrived. This is the official first breath of the age of Aquarius, the new White Hole Exhalation, a beautiful, quiet, enormous, marvelous, radiant thing. Luke 12:32. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. This was never something to be earned. It is something freely given. Romans 8:15. Ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but ye have received the spirit of adoption. The old matrix was labor. The age of radiance is adoption. Matthew 11:28 through 30. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. It is a gift, easy and light, and it is freely given, not earned.